For over 65,000 years, the Australian continent existed in a state of deep ecological equilibrium. The people living here only needed to work about 4 or 5 hours a day to gather food and maintain their shelters. The rest of their time was dedicated to a rich, complex culture. Aboriginal communities view the world through a lens of total kinship. Every person is born into specific, lifelong obligations to the animals, plants, and locations that define their country. Every rock outcrop, waterway, and plant species is a physical embodiment of creation spirits. If you belong to the yam totem, for instance, you believed that certain yams were your literal relatives, and that the landscape held the physical footprint of your dreamtime ancestors. Because of this spiritual kinship, nobody built European-style fences. Through precise oral laws and seasonal migrations, the continent supported over 400 distinct nations and a population of at least 750,000 people. These nations functioned as a structured, integrated society, operating on an ecological logic that prioritized long-term stability over short-term extraction. Then, in 1770, Lieutenant James Cook navigated his ship up the eastern coast. Cook and his crew lacked the context to understand what they were seeing. Because they saw no agricultural plots or recognized signs of European industry, they legally classified the entire continent as terra nullius, nobody's land. The British Empire decided to use this supposedly empty space to solve a domestic crisis: overcrowded prisons. They were about to drop a penal colony directly on top of a thriving ancient civilization, all justified by a legal fiction. In January 1788, the first fleet arrived. About 850 convicts and their military guards were unloaded into Sydney Cove. The British immediately went to work clearing timber and drafting mathematical maps of Botany Bay. They treated the space as a resource to be measured and exploited, blind to the human geography already in place. From the tree line, the local clans watched their sacred balance get ripped apart. Huge British nets depleted the fish in the harbor. Unsustainable hunting decimated the kangaroo population. The colonists were dismantling a 65,000-year-old managed ecosystem in a matter of weeks. As the two cultures clashed over resources, an invisible biological threat began to move silently through the coastal tribes. In April 1789, smallpox began sweeping through the tribes living near Port Jackson. Because the Aboriginal communities had been isolated from these pathogens for millennia, they possessed zero immunity. This chart shows the estimated Aboriginal population of the Sydney Basin. After remaining stable for thousands of years, the population goes into freefall. Within months, between 50 and 70% of the local indigenous population died. The virus also triggered a cultural tragedy. Aboriginal history and law were passed down entirely by word of mouth. When the elders succumbed to the disease, thousands of years of localized Dreamtime knowledge died with them. It was a horrific loss of human life, compounded by the destruction of an ancient civilization's entire oral library. Meanwhile, the British settlement was barely holding itself together. The colony was run by absolute military governors who constantly clashed with their own officers, a group who had seized a monopoly on rum and basic trade goods. The internal tension reached a breaking point in 1808, when the military staged a coup against Governor William Bligh, taking armed control of the colony in the Rum Rebellion. A beat of realization. While the British were busy fighting each other for control of rum and land, their presence was already finishing the work that disease and resource depletion had started. An unstable, chaotic penal camp had managed to dismantle the most enduring system on Earth. By 1810, the surviving Aboriginal people in the Sydney Basin had been pushed to the margins. Dispossessed and starving, many engaged in a guerrilla war to protect whatever land they could. Yet for centuries, the official history of this era was written with fluid prejudice. Textbooks celebrated a narrative of European pioneers bringing order to an empty wilderness. But the physical truth of the Aboriginal presence is still here, hidden in plain sight. Across modern Sydney, there are thousands of archaeological sites, shell middens, and ancient rock engravings, proving that this land was heavily populated. The local clans did not vanish. They adapted to a brutal new reality, holding firmly to their core identity and their kinship with the landscape. Confronting these facts forces us to discard the myth of nobody's land and to acknowledge a connection to country that remains unbroken today.